Wow. So today I'm with Cindy Ingram. On Instagram, you might find her under the Art and Self. She is an artist, a writer. She is a coach and the creator of Art and Self podcast. She's also an art class curator. She does so many amazing things. I mean, if you just look at her socials, yeah, with the Art Connection Circle that she also has going, and she's writing a book right now, which is amazing. So yeah, I'm really intrigued to have this conversation with you as a fellow coach and art lover. So, Cindy, thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, yeah, no, it's my pleasure. And so I guess, just to start off, like perhaps you can share a little bit more with the audience listening right now from your words, what you do and how you've come to do what you do.
Okay. I will do that. And I will try not to tell the entire full life story, but it is all relevant. So I will try to keep it not too long. But I have always been a lover of art since I was little. I can't remember a time where I wasn't obsessed with art. When I was young, I wanted to be a Disney animator, and I loved to draw. But it was when I would see the Disney movies and they would move me so emotionally through the music and the pictures that I knew there was something deeper there for me in art that was not just about drawing well. And so as I grew and as I got more education and more exposure to art, I realized that a lot of my connection came from looking at art that other people had made. I discovered that in high school, I had a teacher who did like a Europe trip every year. And he taught a humanities class, and I went to Europe, and I was like, oh my God, there's art. there's real art by all these people. And there's these people who get to look at it every day as their job. And so I just fell in love, and I got my degree in art history, and I was a museum educator for a while, but that's a really hard field to get into because so many people want the jobs. They don't pay very well. So I ended up teaching art in the classroom. And when I was teaching in the classroom, I realized that the way I taught was more, I wanted to teach like I taught in the museum. I wanted to show works of art, and I wanted to have these really deep, engaging conversations about it. And I wanted to have it connect to the students' personal lives. And yeah, and so that's the way I taught in the classroom. And eventually realized there wasn't any resources out there for that. And so I started a business, Art Class Curator, to help other art teachers have these sort of conversations with works of art in their classrooms. So Art Class Curator is a membership site for art teachers that focuses on teaching art appreciation, although I don't like the term art appreciation because art is so much more than just to be appreciated. It's so much deeper than that. But that's the best word that people know. But through this whole process of running this business, I started to realize that deep emotional connection that I had felt in those Disney movies, and in front of works of art, that I would cry in front of art. I would just feel these big, deep feelings, and I was like, there's just something more. And I've spent my entire career trying to figure out like what that something more is, and how I can help other people obtain that. And so over the last few years, I started to work less with teachers, although I still do work with teachers, but less with teachers and more with just the general population of people who are intrigued by art but don't necessarily know how to connect to it. And I am helping those people connect with themselves through connecting with art. So I kind of use art as a tool for self-development. As a thing that you can look at art and you can talk about yourself in like a really safe way. So I created a program called the Art Connection Circle, which is basically a small group where we look at art and talk about our feelings and learn more about ourselves and each other through looking at art. And then I also am writing a book, which you mentioned in the introduction, and I am so close to finishing my first draft. I'm like 3 chapters away from finishing, and it has been pretty much a culmination of my entire journey from like having a lot of trauma and social anxiety as a child, and how I used art to get through that, and kind of how I came to this place of wholeness and peace and really found what I'm supposed to do. Each chapter is an artwork and I kind of use it as a metaphor to tell my story. And it's just really wonderful. And then the last part of my story, it's kind of a long one, but the last part is in the last year, I had this really intense download one day. It was late December 2021, and it was this download of, you have to make art now. You can't avoid it anymore. And I had spent my entire career, 20 years studying art history, helping people connect with art. And suddenly I had this very clear message that I needed to make art. And so I've spent the last year really grappling with that download and realizing how scared I was to make art, realizing that I had been so close to art, but I had kept the making of it at a pretty several arms length away. And so I have really started making art. I started with an art journal because it felt really safe. And then I just have been working up to painting, and I just started painting actually like last week. So I'm in the middle of my first painting. And so I've proclaimed 2023 as my word of the year as artist, and really allowing myself to think of myself as an artist, and let that part of me free that has kind of been there all along, but not necessarily listened to. Wow. So yeah, all that going on.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And wow, it's that process of actually like being around art and like with art and so in tune with it all this time, and then you actually now starting to also do it yourself, or you have started to do it yourself, and now being really channeling art yourself as well. And well, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I can really relate to it in many ways. So you mentioned as well the art tool as a tool for self-development. I'd love to hear your wisdom on that. What you mean?
Yeah. Well, it took me a really long time to figure this out, because I would hear, teachers talk about the way they taught, art history or works of art, and they would talk about, oh, they were teaching about the artist, and they were telling the story of the artist's lives, and they were talking about the line and the shape and the color and the elements of art, and they were talking about what was going on in the world, and they were talking, all this the stories of the artworks. And the whole time I'm like, there is something missing. Like, that is not it. And I knew that wasn't it, because I had these moments in front of works of art where it was not at all about any of that. That, like, my first real powerful experience in front of a work of art was Pablo Picasso's Girl Before a Mirror. And I remember I turned the corner to look at this painting, and I saw it from across the room, and I just felt like I was punched in the stomach. Like, it just took all of the air from me. And I stood in front of it for a very long time. My husband saw the entire exhibit and came back around. I was still just like in front of this one painting. And, none of that time in front of that painting had anything to do with Picasso. None of it had anything to do with any of the art history of it. It was just me responding to the magic and the energy that came off of that canvas. It was the lines and the colors. Like, yes, they did play a part in that emotional impact. Like, all of that did play a role, but there was something so much deeper that I couldn't pinpoint at the time. And I left. I was in an exhibit 4 hours away. It was in Houston, and I live in Dallas. And so we drove there and back in that one day just to go to this exhibit. And I, on the way home, wrote an essay, 4-page long essay, about the experiences. I couldn't figure it out. I changed I was at the time applying for PhDs in art history. And I was like, no, that's not what I want to do. I don't want to learn more. If I learn more, then what if I lose that magical feeling that I got? And what I was tapping into then, and I didn't realize, is that we have this, that humans are sort of built for making connections and seeing things as metaphors, and seeing ourselves in other people, seeing ourselves in things. I mean, that's what art is all about, is we see ourselves reflected back into it. And what I didn't realize at the time is that if you get the right art in front of the right person, that it's not the art that's just bringing all the stuff and you're just supposed to learn everything about what the art is and you're supposed to just receive it, but that you're providing stuff too, that what you trauma you've gone through, what feelings you have, what life experiences you have, all of that is like a part of that interaction. And so what happens between that is there's so much depth of learning for the person, because they can look at their life through a different lens, especially if the person is really feels maybe a little bit not as comfortable talking about themselves and talking about their feelings. Is really vulnerable thing to just say, hey, let's talk about our feelings, about, shame. That's not an easy thing to suddenly start talking about. But if you see an element of shame reflected back in artwork, it takes it out of you. It makes it a little bit less personal, and it allows you to sort of explore that concept of shame in a way that feels safer, that feels also that you're not alone in it, that this artist also maybe felt this way, and that the other people, in the Art Connection Circle, there's other people too, and they are sharing their thoughts on what they see. And it's a way to really look within yourself in a way that is it's vulnerable for sure, but it's a little bit safer, a little bit easier, and has the capacity to help you see things that you might not have seen without having that, influence of the art there. I try to put words around it. It's very, it's one of those things. It's like, oh, you just need to experience it. But yeah, there's so much to be learned about ourselves through looking at art.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so much deeper than just what we can see, and very much like a personal experience as well, like you mentioned. So tell me a little bit more about the class you just shared. Like I love that. Like what you're creating is an environment for people to share their feelings and to share, and through art and that creates that safe environment, and also the ability to talk about it in a better way. How did you start this group, I guess?
Oh yeah, I'm about to do in this summer, I'm going to do my third round of it. So I've done 2 versions of it. And, I started to realize it was really right after COVID. And I started to realize that my business was lacking a deep emotional connection and an intimacy. Like the beginning of my business was very creative. It was just me. I was getting to do things that I was passionate about. And as the business grew, I became like the CEO, and I had a team that did all the work. And like the more and more the business ran, the more removed I was from why I started it to begin with, which was my love of art and my passion for art. And I started to get to a point where I would go to an art exhibit and I would only be looking at it through, how can I teach this? How can I write a lesson about this? How can I share this on social media? How can I tell my audience about this? And like my personal connection was just not there with art. I started to not be able to write. There was just my creative energy was just kind of being sucked out of me. And then once I realized that, I was like, I took a big step back, and I was like, okay, what's going on here? What's missing? And I realized all along that it was that personal connection that I had to art that really is what I have to give to the world. And I felt like, okay, I did that with Art Class Curator. I gave that to so many teachers and students. I was like, but I have more to give. And so I started to play around with this idea of what would happen if we just removed what would happen if we removed the expectation that we're going to learn about art, quote unquote, learn about art, that what if it's this deeper thing that I knew was happening. And so I was like, well, I wanted to experiment. I wanted to put a group of people together in a room, and I wanted to show them art. I wanted to see what happened, if with this idea in mind. So the program is kind of I've also had this lifelong love of self-development. I've been like trying to fix myself my entire life. That's been my entire goal. Is like, let's just fix myself. I've read so many books and done so many programs, therapy and coaching and healing and all the possible things that one could do. And so it felt really exciting to take all of that body of knowledge, which I thought I was developing just to fix myself, but realizing all along that these two things, this art side and the self-development side, were actually more closely related than I even thought. And so the Art Connection Circle is a small group, and we meet in Zoom, and in every session we have some sort of topic, like we do a lesson on values, like figuring out what your values are, but then instead of just kind of doing the values exercise and talking about values, we look at an artwork that is somehow related to values. And so we look at the artwork and we talk about it, and and with the concept of values kind of swirling in our head, because we've just done, kind of figured out what our values were. And it adds a deeper insight into the importance of values and living to your values and stuff like that. And so everybody, and it's not a teaching program at all. I don't consider myself a teacher at all. I sort of facilitate activities, but really I put the artwork up on the screen and I ask what's going on here. And then there's conversation. I just allow the conversation to flow, and everybody in the room shares their thoughts on the artwork. And then when your initial thoughts then turn to, you hear someone else's thoughts, and then then you see something you didn't see before. And so then you're going even deeper, and it gets really deep really quickly when you have all those people sort of feeding off of each other. And then so it's I've done it for 6 weeks, and I've done it for 12 weeks, the same number of classes. I actually don't know what this upcoming one is just yet. I'm still in the planning processes. But it's about 12 sessions. But what's been fascinating is not only do you really develop a relationship with works of art in a new way that you wouldn't have expected, but you develop this relationship with yourself, and you know more about yourself through the process. And also you develop a community of people who also went through it with you. And so you develop these really deep bonds with the other people in the group too. So there's all these side benefits as well of that sort of really loving, safe environment. And it's just such a magical, special experience. And it's one of those things like, oh, everything in my life was leading to this. Like this was why all of everything happened, was so that this could happen.
Amazing. How has your life, I guess, changed, or has it been impacted by this since you've started doing it?
Oh gosh, I feel like a completely different person. I feel like a completely different person. I used to be very ambitious. And it came from a place of wanting to prove myself, wanting to be important, wanting to be seen, wanting to, it was, you'll read in the book when you read the book, because of course everybody listening is going to read the book. It's so good. Hold on, I'm going to take a drink of water in my mouth.
Yeah, go
ahead. That I was trying to be the best at everything, and I was trying to be perfect, and I was trying to be to show everybody my worth. And when I had that sort of crash moment of, okay, I built this whole business, but like, is this even what I want? And why was I doing that to begin with, when really I'm an artist and I'm a writer and I'm a creator, and now I've created this thing that is not me creating anymore, but me running this business. And so that sort of revelation happened at the same time as this program. And it made me come to this place of seeing my whole journey and my whole sort of desperation to fix my brokenness, like seeing that through a more compassionate lens. Because before this period, before really this program, there was like shame when I looked inside myself. There was embarrassment. There was like, when I would look at my past, all I would see was the sad things. And now when I look back at my past and I look into myself, I see like what I'm capable of creating and what all of that past stuff I went through like did for me to be able to be the person who can create such a magical experience. Yeah, I'm so much more like aware and of my gifts and my heart and the things that made me weird and that I was embarrassed by are now things that like create things that are really amazing. And so I don't know, it's just this place of like of acceptance and love for myself that I never had before.
Oh, I can notice a lot of emotion there as well.
Yeah, like, oh, I'm crying. I know I would always do that when I talk about myself. But it's a lot. Yeah. And in the process of writing this book too has been around, like I started the book before I started the program, and my book was going to be an art education book. It was going to be, here's how to teach art, and here's why, and here's all the science behind why you should do it this way. And it has completely, it's like the process of what the book was versus what it is now is in like a direct mirror of what I was and what I am now. It's like it's shed all of that like proving energy that I used to have of like, let me show you how smart I am. Let me show you, let me convince you. Whereas now it's more like fully embodied as me without all of that other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I find that always intriguing, right? How art, and in this case you're talking about the book, you know, how it reflects you in those different facets. And so I'm also curious about you were doing you just started painting now, and before you were doing in the sketchbook, and how has art that you create changed over the different periods of your life? How you
Oh yeah. Well, one of the reasons I didn't make art and in the past, I mean, I made it in my classroom. And my kids' birthdays, I'd make them birthday posters of like their favorite characters, you know, but it wasn't necessarily art. It was like drawing and painting, but it wasn't quote unquote making art. And I think there was some part of me that thought that you had to have an idea of what the artwork would look like. You had to see the end result before you started. And so I would maybe have an idea, but I'm like, well, I don't even get to that. And I don't really think am capable of that. And so it would just stifle any attempt at getting to that end result because I was setting the expectations too high. And with everything I know about art, I've been studying art my entire life. I know that's not how most artists work. Like some of them do. Some of them like, yes, I want to make this thing and I will make it. And this is my logical brain creating this process. But I've never been a logical person. I have ADHD. I'm really spontaneous. I follow whims. Like, why would I think that I would make art any other way? And it really was writing the book that taught me that opening yourself up to the process will create whatever end result needs to be created, that you don't really need to see the full end result to create it. And actually that's maybe even more stifling that way. So I learned through my writing practice that all the magic is in the process. So I decided, okay, well, I would do the same with art that I did with writing. And I started just creating in my art journal And I learned in that process that I can't have an idea or an inkling of what it will end up being, that I just have to start making something, and and I have to learn to follow my intuition and learn to let the artwork tell me what to do next. And there usually does end up being meaning to the work, to whatever I create, that it ends up reflecting something in my life in a way that I wasn't expecting, but that I can't start with that in mind. My daughter's always telling me, "Oh, you should make an artwork about this." And I was like, "I can't do that." I was like, "I can't make an artwork about anything. I just have to start making it. And the aboutness will show up, 3/4 of the way through. Right now, I'm going to pick what colors look pleasing, and I'm going to make what lines want to be made, and I'm going to collage whatever feels like the right thing to put on. And I'm not going to question it. And like somewhere along the way, there will be, it will all make sense. But if I like white knuckle, like wanting it to look a certain way at the end, that is just not, I learned that's just not how I work. And so I started this painting last week because I've been stalling for a while. I've known I wanted to create a painting for a while. But every time I've done a painting in the past, it's been like, okay, you got to make the painting that you see in your head and just make it come to life. But this time I'm like, well, I'm just going to do exactly what I'm doing in the art journal. I'm going to take it one step at a time, and I'm going to let the artwork unfold as it wants to unfold. And I am making the weirdest thing. I never would have imagined in a million years that I would have made so far what I made. There's like a white tiger on it. I'm like, I don't know. I would have never thought I would make a painting with a white tiger on it, but like it wanted to be on there. So I was like, I listened to it. So yeah, it's really learning to like listen to myself, listen to my intuition, taking myself seriously, trusting whatever comes up, and following those creative nudges.
Yeah, no, I can definitely feel that you are very in tune with your intuition, with your soul, kind of like, giving you the next steps, and you listening to that and feeding on from that, I guess. And that's beautiful. And like you mentioned, there's so many different artists. Some have the way of wanting to see it first and create it, but yeah, I really enjoy that intuitive approach myself. So I can really feel that.
Yeah. Well, and two, I with my art history degree, I had to take studio art classes in college, and I have a modicum amount of natural talent. I think drawing is like, some people just an inborn natural ability. They just can do it like so perfectly. And then some people have to really fight to do it. Like you can get good at it and you can struggle. But I was like, okay, I'm pretty good. I can do proportion. I can get it on the page, but I never was good at like the modeling and like the making it look real in 3D. And I took this drawing class, and I tried so hard, and all the things that we were being taught, I worked so hard. And at the end of the semester, we go out in the hallway and we put up like our best drawings and have like a one-on-one with the professor. And he was like, "You're the hardest working person in this class." And I was like, oh, felt good about that. So I was like, I felt that. I was like, I was trying really hard. And then I got a B. And I was like, okay, I did my absolute very best. And so I think I learned, like in that experience, I'm like, doing my very best means like I'm still not good enough. I'll never be good enough to like make art. And I really do think like that like sucked a lot of the wind out of my sails. I hate that, wind out of my sails, but like it just kind of took away my confidence in my ability to make art. And after that point, I didn't think I was creative enough. I didn't think I had the right amount of ideas, because I couldn't create this, because of course I thought you had to have the finished product in your head before you started. I couldn't do that. And then also like, even though I tried harder than anybody else, I still am not good enough. And so I think that really limited me as well. And then I realized, it's not really about that either. There are plenty of artists who don't draw in there or don't do realistic things, but for some reason I just kind of felt like I couldn't do it.
Yeah. It's amazing or unreal the meanings that we create with
Mm-hmm.
so many stories there are, like of artists having created a certain meaning about what it means about them and that creativity, and then felt limited or not good enough to create art. So many stories from school, from all of those experiences. So anyone listening right now, I think, will really feel that, I guess, that perhaps even lift off that almost that limitation one can put on oneself. That doesn't mean that you're not creative, and everyone has their different ways of expressing themselves, right? And finding what that is for you is so important.
And we all have these like art wounds, that somewhere along the way we got wounded in relationship to our creativity, and that made a lot of people stop.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Wow, I'm really appreciating that you're sharing your story. I find it really I don't know the word I want to find, but it's very invigorating. I don't know if that and so you're writing a book, and you have your circle, your creativity circle is also coming up soon. But tell us more about how people can be in touch with you and what where they can find you.
Okay. They can find me at artandself.com. It's kind of a newer website. It doesn't have everything up there just yet, but the podcast is there. I have a podcast where I have conversations with other people about art. We kind of model what it looks like to use art in that way. And so I have all sorts of people, and I pick an artwork and we talk about it. And then you can follow me on social media. On Instagram, I'm Art and Self, and on Facebook, I'm Art and Self Cindy. You type in Art and Self Cindy Ingram, it'll show up. The book is going to come out probably in the late summer. I don't have an exact date. Every time I try to put an exact date on it, the date changes. So I'm just not even trying anymore. I will know soon, but not yet. But it probably will be in the late summer. And then, but you can join my email list at artandself.com to get notifications of when the book's coming out and when this next circle is. And the waiting list for the circle is just artandself.com/circle as well.
Fantastic.
A lot of places. Yeah.
And all of the links are underneath this podcast episode anyway, so you can find all of that very easy with one click. And before we finish, just what would be something that you feel deep from your heart you would want to share with the listeners right now, that either might be, as we just talked about, in a place of feeling I'm not creative or have those creativity wounds, and those perhaps that have already started to be a little bit creative but might need a little bit of encouragement. What comes up for you?
Oh, well, yeah, what came up for me is listening to yourself. I think a lot of us have, for me, that time I was talking about where I kind of lost my creativity, I knew there was a nudge, there was a knowing that I was ignoring for quite a long time. And I was just like, no, I can't deal with this. I'm going to ignore this. No, I can't deal with this. I'm going to ignore this. And like, until I got really loud messages that I couldn't ignore. But really my whole journey has been like listening to that sort of inner knowing that I have and following that. And chances are there is that inner knowing within you, the listener, that is telling you what to do next and how to do it, and trusting whatever that voice is telling you to do.
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't mean hurting another person. Listen to that voice.
Yes.
If the voice is telling you to kill someone, don't listen to
Don't
it.
listen.
But
right. Yes.
It's probably not.
No, your soul wouldn't be telling you that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. No, that's amazing. Amazing advice. And thank you so much for coming on this podcast today, Cindy. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.